with Jérémie and Dougal. So the title of presentation is La musique électronique à Tokyo, une scène analogique, définitivement analogique. Electro music in Tokyo are definitely analog scene. So it will be in English. Okay.
Yeah, somehow we switched the language.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you very much. So, let me briefly introduce you too. So, Jérémie is a GSPS postdoctoral fellow at the University of Tokyo, currently working on social-cultural challenges of algorithmic recommendation in Japan. And Dougal is a PhD student at the UHESS in Paris and a part of the Centre d'analyse et de mathématiques sociales. His research focuses on empirical understanding on the role of music streaming platform affordance in shaping on and off platform consumption practices. So it's for you. We don't. You have to.
Thanks, sorry. Thanks a lot for the presentation and also for the organization, the invitation, and thanks to everybody being here. Yeah, so I'm Jeremy. I will start the presentation and then give the floor to Dougal. So yeah, we are former colleagues in Berlin at the Centre Marblock. Well, yeah, both working on music, consumption or production, and I did a field, for instance, in the streaming platform, so how they recommend music, and yeah, we wanted to have some kind of project together, and he's still in Berlin, Dougal. I'm now in Tokyo, so I wanted to kind of compare two scenes, so the electronic music scenes in Tokyo and Berlin, and here kind of maybe a bit more focus on Tokyo for kind of data reasons. So but yeah, there is the Berlin in the presentation. Yeah, so I will start to present some related work. So the first a batch of literature is about our roots. So it kind of traces back to the beginning of the century, where basically some literature were focusing on the shift for DJs to analog practice to kind of a digital one. So yeah, kind of maybe basically from using vinyls to using NCDs to using some new type of mediums and with laptops. And another study, which is quite young, from Warner and Ikeda, about actually a comparison between Berlin and Tokyo in more economical terms, but still, yeah, which is kind of relevant for our study. But this is kind of the let's say the literature point of view, and we have another one where it's kind of a starting point to the study, and which kind of is linked to our intuitions we had, and especially intuition we had when I moved to Tokyo a couple of months ago, and then we discussed with Dougal, and we had maybe this kind of batch of stereotypes, ideas, something we read in old studies, something we discussed with people in Tokyo. And yeah, one of maybe the three big things are like the results of our discussion is like Japanese people are like more willing to listen to Japanese music, and Japanese production is bigger than international production, and then consumption in Japan. That Japanese culture is more kind of have a bigger tendency to be exported than other cultural products being imported, and that there is also kind of a different perspective on the value creation here, especially in the electronic music scene, where we would say that Berlin is more like focused on kind of promoting political engagement, promoting tourism, and that Tokyo music scene would be more like focusing on the economic impact. And so that we would have two kind of scenes, one in Berlin, more like the kind of subculture, and another one to be defined in Tokyo. So this kind of a hypothesis at the end of the slide. And so the main concept of our study is like the music scene, so which is kind of a network of actors in a specific location. So here Tokyo and Berlin with the infrastructures, and that the DJs are like the main stakeholders here for the reason that they are like probably the critical or the main actors in the electronic music scenes, and also for practical reason because we could have kind of a list of DJs that play in Tokyo, in Berlin, and that are then based in these two cities on the website Resident Advisor, which is a website which features all the events. So we scrape it, and to scrape it from 2020 to 24. And so in 1 minute, I try to present some small broad results about the scraping. So it's really like it's not reflecting perfectly the scene, but like just to have an idea. So there are way more venues in Berlin. There are the same amount of non-local DJs, and but on contrary, there are way more locally based DJs in Berlin than locally based DJs in Tokyo. And so also when we compare some numbers, there is also a bigger competition in Berlin. And for our study, so we took the number of DJs that are locally based, so that it's a self description on Resident Advisor. So there are more than 3,000 DJs in Berlin, a bit more than 600 in Tokyo and actually Kanto, to have a bigger pool. So it makes the comparison between city of Berlin and Tokyo a bit kind of a change, but not that much. And so in total, we sent out a survey with kind of 20 questions to 3,000 DJs, so in Berlin and Tokyo. We got the same number of answers in each city, which means a higher ratio in Tokyo. And around 60 DJs said they were okay for an interview, and at the end we will probably have 10 plus interviews in each city. And so far I did 8 interviews in Tokyo.
Okay, thank you, Jérémie. Okay, I'll take over for a few slides and start to speak more about the method here. So the idea is that we wanted to capture at least the DJ scene within Tokyo and in Berlin. Evidently, the people who answer the survey, we might be underrepresenting or overrepresenting certain types of DJs. So the idea was that we want to ensure some kind of scene representativity by doing like readdressing or reweighting effectively. So the idea here is that we want to match the follower distribution. So each DJ on Resident Advisor has a number of followers, and we want to ensure the distribution of followers is similar to what's on platform by reweighting. The problem is that for most of the respondents, there was no follower information. So either they were anonymized or they gave a different email when they answered the survey. So the idea here was that we need to predict the number of followers. So the first thing we tried here was to predict the number of followers from the fee of the DJ. For Tokyo, this worked great. There was kind of a linear relation between number of followers. So as you gain a bigger following, you start to charge more. In Berlin, interestingly, this isn't the case. So you start to amass more following, and this doesn't really equate to any kind of economic value in that sense. So I think this is an interesting phenomenon that could be a subject for future work, but alas, it means that we can't use it as a method to predict the number of followers. So instead, next slide. Thank you. Instead, we developed a more complex method to predict the number of followers from the age of the respondent, the time in which they've been DJing, so how long, the fee, as well as a status if they're professional or not, which is just a binary variable. So all of these were taken from the survey data. And ultimately for the Berlin, we were able to explain around 40% of the variance. For Tokyo, it was about 60%, which is pretty good for social science standards, I think. So after we predicted the followers, we then reweighted using this nice package from Facebook. So everything I'm going to talk about from now on is done after this reweighting to represent the scene. So first, let's talk about some socio-demographic variations between the DJs in Berlin and the DJs in Tokyo. So I'm going to highlight three main findings here. The first is that the Tokyo scene is significantly older than the Berlin scene, such as shown on the plots on the right. So the lines that go up effectively are what we'd expect from the population. The bar chart is what we actually observed in the survey after reweighting. So the scene is generally older than the Berlin scene. However, we're also observing there might be more evidence of a next generation in Tokyo, in the Tokyo electronic music scene. So in particular, the under 26 bracket is overrepresented in the Tokyo respondents in comparison to Berlin. So we have kind of this tension here of the scene is also older, but at the same time, there might be more kind of new generations coming into the scene. In addition, if we look at how international the scene is, we see that in absolute terms, Berlin has more international people within the scene. So that's coming from outside of Germany. But if we look at this relative to what we'd expect from the population, in fact, Tokyo is relatively more international. So it's kind of 4 times more than we would expect simply from the population. Berlin around 2 times more. So there's a certain nuance there that we can add. Next slide. Okay. We next examine the variations between the two scenes in terms of DJ performance practices. So we look at both the types of venues which DJs typically play at, as well as if they travel to play or travel to perform effectively. So first, we look at the following question. Which of the following venues have you played to an audience at? And there were a series of answers which respondents could choose from. Effectively, to try and work out if there's a significant difference, what we're doing here is performing a regression using a generalized linear model, it's called, where we're controlling for the socio-demographic differences that we saw previously. And the independent variable is basically, are you in the Berlin scene or are you in the Tokyo scene? And we're trying to see if there's a significant difference here. What we see is that there is differences in terms of the types of venues which these two scenes, the DJs typically play at. So Tokyo is more associated with smaller clubs, chill out spots such as cafes, bars, or galleries. Berlin is more significantly associated with festivals and raves. In addition, if we look at the Berlin scene, these DJs within this scene are more likely to travel to other continents to perform. So the odds of performing in another continent is 3.11 times the odds of a DJ from Tokyo. Okay. Next, we examine the similarities and differences in terms of playing recorded music. So in particular, in terms of the adoption of media players. So we look at 2 factors here in terms of offline consumption and also in terms of how they adopt media players as tools for DJing. So the 2 main findings here are that the Tokyo scene is generally, as literature would suggest, to some degree attracted by legacy devices. So for instance, there's a significantly over-representation of consuming on cassettes, consuming on CD players, and also for the craft of DJing, using old CDJs, which are like digital, basically turntables, but ones that take CD. So nowadays they take USB. Yeah, you get the idea. However, vinyl is the exception. So in the Berlin scene, there's significantly stronger adoption of vinyl for listening in comparison to Tokyo. This might not be so surprising if any of you have visited Berlin and seen the sheer abundance of record stores in the city, which I think really, capture this dynamic. On again, the topic of playing recorded music and looking at differences and similarities in the scenes, we look at streaming platform adoption and how the 2 scenes vary in this sense. So in particular, first we look at platform adoption. So do you not use streaming platforms? With regard to adoption, there's no significant differences, but when we look at how the DJs declare that it influences their practice, we see that Tokyo DJs are significantly more likely to declare that streaming actually influences their practice, okay, in comparison to Berlin DJs. When we look at also how these DJs make use of these platforms, so what kind of facets of the platform do they use, or what kind of affordances, effectively, we call them, we see that the Berlin scene's usage of this platform is significantly more algorithmic, so they use kind of recommendation devices, or at least so they declare, whereas Tokyo DJs are more organic and editorial. So by organic, we mean maybe using your own personal playlists or using the search bar. etc., etc. So the evidence here seems to suggest that there's a certain affinity for analog adoption, both on and off platform. However, there's a certain nuance we can add in terms of like this doesn't necessarily stop people from adopting platforms per se. And furthermore, Tokyo DJs would also declare that it influences their practice. Next slide. Okay, we then also examine variations in the social contribution of DJ practices and how DJs in both scenes perceive this. So considering the following question, do you have the feeling that your DJing contributes towards, and there's a series of different topics which the respondents can choose from and choose to rate this effectively on a scale of 1 to 5. We see there's two significant topics where differences emerge, that is with regard to tourism and with regard to economic value. So Berlin is significantly more likely to declare that they believe their DJ practice contributes towards economic value. For Tokyo DJs, they're significantly more likely to say that this contributes towards tourism. Okay, so this is reminiscent of particularly the Berlin sense of kind of the commodification of the scene, such as highlighted in the work of techno-tourism from Garcia. On the contrary, we find that despite our prior hypothesis being that maybe Berlin scene would value political movements, there is no significant difference in this regard, or at least so respondents declare. Next slide. Okay, and finally, we look at the fear of AI. So how attractive is it in terms of composition and also in terms of recommendation? And I'll go over this quickly, but we see that effectively there's also differences. Tokyo more likely to adopt AI, Berlin more likely to declare rejecting it, which I think is exemplified in this following quote. So I'll give the floor back to Jérémie now, so we have some time for the conclusion, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks, Hilary. And I think we will share the slide after, so we can have the literature and some graphs. Some wrap-ups. Many things were already said by Dougal, just to have these 4 take-home messages. So the first one is that there is no clear cut between the in the analog-digital tension between the two cities. Berlin seems indeed more digital, as maybe expected, than Tokyo was analog. But in Tokyo, we can see also a paradox where, of course, they maybe listen to music more on CD, on cassette. They will use more CDJing, but they will also be more influenced by streaming platform, or use more streaming in their DJ practice, like here. Maybe it's underlined by this quote of some DJ in Tokyo stating the interest of streaming platforms. The second one is like about the localism or globalism of the scene, and here our intuitions are rather confirmed. Whereas there are as many international DJs in Tokyo and Berlin proportionally, DJs, so if we kind of rephrase it, DJs in Berlin will have more chances to play in Tokyo and Asia than the other way around. So this is confirmed by the country of origin, the gig's location, and kind of this relates also to the third, which take-home message, which is about the maturity of the scene. Here, it's, you could say this is confirmed, but it's a bit more timid. Like we've seen this Tokyo demography scene is kind of in a hourglass shape, but Berlin is likely more mature in terms of this is maybe a take-home message from the take-home message. Mature in terms of economic scene, like the fees, we can see they are more international. There may be a bit more clubs. Also, the competition is higher, so there is a more active, lively scene than in Tokyo. And this is also confirmed somehow by interviews and discussion in Tokyo, where we can see and kind of confirm this maybe new generation that a couple of years ago, maybe 20 years ago, it was quite active, but now there is a new generation with this pandemic that hit quite heavily the scene here Tokyo. And finally, the last one is about the nicheness of the scene. So if it is connected to the overground scene or not. So here we still confirm the literature, and but there is probably definitely some more work to do because the literature is either old or on other scenes, or we also base a lot on kind of discussions. But yeah, anyway, we can see that here with our work, the Berlin has kind of what we say an underground culture, a subculture scene, and it's way connected to the overground, or it's kind of blurry borders with a big economic value. Like now, the DJ scene, the techno scene is a cultural heritage in Berlin. The fees are higher. They have more DJs, have more followers, and they are more connected to the international. In Tokyo, we can still say that the DJ scenes are kind of islands of tastes, where the techno scene could be maybe more the pop DJ scenes and so on, but they seem pretty ultra locals with way more less fans. The fees are not so high, and there is also this kind of interesting quote about this connection between what he is called the underground and the mainstream, with maybe so America and Germany have the bigger connection and not in Tokyo. But this is definitely something we need to dive into, this kind of link between the top and kind of the underground. I think this is it from our side. Thanks a lot for listening, and looking forward to questions, and I will prepare the slides to share in the chat.